In this video from Demystifying Proposals, we talk about next level compliance, not just how to build a compliant outline, but how to take compliance to the next level. True compliance doesn't stop at the section headings of the outline. That's level 1 compliance, setting up the outline based on the overall section headings in sections L, M, and C. But there's also something we call internal compliance, and that means breaking down the sections into their component parts. So most proposal instructions and evaluation criteria include sentences or phrases of what technical approach or management approach means. And those should be your next level headings if they don't break them down for you in the section L and M. So for example, the staffing plan might say, quote, offerers should explain their staffing levels, how the staff proposed meet the requirements, and how staffing levels were determined. So under your staffing plan heading, the subheadings would be staffing levels, how staff meet requirements, how staffing levels were determined, so that you are very clear in your headings and your subheadings how you are providing exactly the information that they're asking for. So breaking that example down even further, your staffing levels, RFP section L1B1, right? Because that's the first subsection of that section of management. So you add that .1 to indicate that it's the section of the RFP that goes one level down. Again, if they don't actually number that instruction, then don't put a number in. But if they do number it, put the number in. So then they're going to ask you in that section sometimes, what does staffing look like? So that might be most easily addressed as a table. But for compliance, be sure that whatever you say in your technical approach matches what ends up in the cost volume. So in the cost volume, they're going to be looking at price to win. And price to win may end up changing the staffing levels during proposal development. They may decrease the number of staff in a particular LCAT, or they may increase the staff in a particular LCAT, or they may change what the LCATs are from, say, senior level positions to just those positions or lower level positions. So make sure as a final check at the usually during white glove or maybe even gold team, that the staffing levels reflected in the technical approach are the same as the staffing levels in the cost volume. So then in the next section, how the staff meet the requirements, again, add that number 2 if that's how the RFP labels that section. And then you want to maybe consider this, asking a question to narrow this to the key personnel. Because if you have to talk about how all your staff meet the requirements, that could get into a lot of detail and a lot of pages that you probably don't have. And most of the time, the government is really only interested in the key personnel. Sometimes they're interested in everybody. So it's actually worth asking that question. So again, often complying with this requirement uses a table that maps the labor category requirements, the LCATs, and the section C or section K requirements that often, that's where other places where they have requirements for your key personnel to show how your personnel have that experience or those capabilities. So you may, for example, for the program manager, you have the name in the far left column. Then you have their title, program manager, project manager, whatever the RFP calls that person. And then in section C, that may require them to have a PMP, for example, and you would say PMP. And then if section K or section H, whichever has the key personnel requirements, has additional requirements, then you want to make sure that you include all of that information in your table. It's a very easy way to show that your staff meet the requirements. Then finally, you have to make sure that whatever you say in that table or whatever you say in this section, the resumes reflect the exact same information. So people don't always have all the information on their resumes that in, might be included here. Make sure that you update the resumes with any information that you need to show how the staff meet the requirements, both in the section here, so the technical approach or the management approach, or also in the resumes. And then do that cross check, just like you did with the cost volume. And then how staffing levels were determined. So that might be the next section of the management. So there you want to talk about how did you determine what staff the program or project will need? Did you develop a work breakdown structure? Did you do a comparison to another analogous program? Did you determine your staffing levels? Again, whatever you put here needs to be reflected in the cost volume, or whatever's in the cost volume needs to be reflected here. So here I'm talking about an instance where the evaluation criteria did not exactly match what the proposal instructions criteria were. So in a perfect world, those two things match, right? In a perfect world, in section L, they ask you to talk about section staffing levels. And in the evaluation criteria, they also ask you to talk about staffing levels. But if they don't match exactly, then you're going to have to add in the section M requirements that are in addition. So in this case, we had an RFP that asked for proposed additional staff. So in addition to the key personnel, they wanted you to talk about the additional staff. That was an M only requirement. So you'll notice the bracket only refers to the M section where that information was required. This is again where those parenthetical references to sections L, M, and C come in really handy to show compliance. So internal compliance can get really fun when it comes to the statement of work or the PWS requirements, because as you did with the proposal instructions and the evaluation criteria, so you now must do with the statement of work and the PWS task, right? The top level headings in this part of your outline should be exactly the same as those in section C, in the same order as section C. Don't rearrange things. And then within each task, if you have room, include the subsections as well. So this depends on what your page limits are, whether you can break down the tasks. But if you can, it's a really good way to show, again, compliance. So within program management, the first three things they asked us for in this example were a kickoff meeting, monthly status reports, and quarterly meetings. So our subsections of program management level 1.0 were 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, quarterly meetings, monthly status reports, kickoff meeting. Where this gets really tricky is if the subtasks are extensive and your page limits are minimal. So that's a place where you might consider a features and benefits table or some other kind of table where you include the subtasks in one column, what you're going to do, the features in the second column, and then a third column that would be benefits of how you're doing the work that are benefits to the customer. So that's a good way to address a lot of subtasks in a relatively small number of pages when your page limits are particularly tight. I hope you enjoyed this video from Demystifying Proposals. Please leave a comment if you have any questions or you think there's additional information that needs to be added, and we will consider updates as appropriate. Thank you for your time.